What's up, YouTube? What's up, YouTube? It's your boy back with another one. People, in today's video, we want to discuss whether or not people, colored people, have a culture. Let me know what you think about this topic in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. You know we family, right? Holler. People, today's topic is an interesting one because I've been wanting to make this video for a very long time, right? And I just couldn't find the right angle to make this video with, right? So I'm just gonna shoot straight from the hip and just tell it as it is, right? I'm not gonna try and use an angle, I'm not gonna try and sugarcoat anything. I'm just gonna be straight up, right? Okay. So as you see from the title, it says, do colored people have a culture? For most black people, and this is what I've discovered or realized on the African continent, people who are African, indigenous African, those that belong to tribes and have ancestral names and have cultures and traditions and customs, right? Customs, cultures, traditions, and systems that these tribes follow from generation to generation and have been in almost institutionalized by tradition, right? Claim that mixed race people or colored people do not have a culture. Now, it's it's wrong. Now I'm talking from the view of a colored person, right? And it's wrong and could be right, right? Why am I saying this? It's wrong and or could be right. Colored people vary. It's the colored race is diverse. Not every colored family is similar to a traditional indigenous African family, so to speak. For example, Zulu people do Zulu things. Of course, they're going to have touches of Western here and there, right? But there are certain values that set Zulu people apart from white people, colored people, Indian people, and Shangani, Yoruba, Igbo, Shona, Nama, you name it, right? Certain values, certain traits, certain that. Then we have a diverse range of households, right? When it comes to tradition and culture among people of various race groups, for example, right? So when we're looking at tradition and culture from a colored perspective, it's almost as if you have to take it by a either a regional basis. You have to take either by a house to house or house by house case, or you have to take it either by a religious group type of setting. Now, what am I saying? Let me break it down to you in simple terms, right? Cape Town colors, Cape Townians, Cape Town colors do not have the same traditions as Joburg colors, for example, if you know what I mean, right? Why am I saying this? Let me just give you an example of one term. Joba colours, when they speak, they would normally incorporate, let's just say, Zulu words in their language when they speak. Whereas Capetonian colours would speak Afrikaans and maybe include English words instead of Zulu words. Maybe here and there you do get the few that will now, because of work, you're working with indigenous Xhosa people and that they now will say, oh, that and that and that. But I'm now just talking overall as a collective, right? Joba colours are more African leaning, whereas Capetonian colours are more white leaning in their ways, in their systems of doing things. Understand what I mean? Even when a Joburg person speaks Afrikaans, it almost feels or seems to a person that the accent tends to lean more to the black side. Whereas when Cape Townians speak their Afrikaans, it almost seems leaning to a white side. Do you understand what I mean? So no two colored cultures are the same depending on the regions where they're from. And I'm pretty sure Durban colors are totally different because they don't speak Afrikaans at all. Well, the majority don't, from what I understand, right? But there are certain traits that we all do as colored people, right? So this is what I'm saying. They differ, but there are certain traits that we all do as colored people, no matter where you're from, right? Number one, drinking, smoking, fighting, and gangs, right? Is that part of the culture? Yes, those are part of the culture. The taking out of front teeth is now regional, specific to Cape Town for the Western Cape. You don't find that. It's not a big thing in Joburg. It's not a big thing in Durban. No, it's not. So, colored people, it's almost hard, difficult to box their culture into one defined thing because it's just not going to be the same everywhere you go. Then you get the colored people who actually follow their religious beliefs and use that as culture. So, like for example, the Muslims would not follow a Christian household's traditions and cultures. They'd follow the entire Muslim way of doing, even though they are colored. They will not transcribe to the colored way of doing things, but they will do it to the Muslim way of doing things. That's their culture. Does it make sense? So, for example, to be a man in an African culture, you have to go to the bush, get circumcised. I don't know whatever happens there. They say it's secretive stuff that happens there, but you go to the bush as a boy, you come back as a man. That's part of the culture, right? Colored culture for initiations, for example, you have to either join a gang or go to prison. There's no going to the bush. It's either you join a gang or you go to prison. Most of the time, you show you're a man as a colored person by going to prison. That's how you show that you're a man. That's in colored culture. Um, Food wise, there are certain foods that colored people eat that is almost undeniable. It's not universal because other countries do not have the certain foods that they have, right? But there are just certain dishes that are almost unspeakably um, universal throughout all the colored cultures. Whether it's in Namibia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, those are the three countries I know that are big on that have the like three largest colored groupings. So what's the most popular thing about all these three? The braai culture. Colored people love braai. No matter where you go, they love to braai. Colored people, they love to smoke. They love to drink. They love to party. They That's colored culture, right? There's other nuances, right? Other smaller, like even dress code. This is the way we dress, Again, like I'm saying, it's regional, but colored people have a certain way of dressing, right? So it's your Jordans, your Timberlands, shopping at your sports scene, it's your red bag. That's part of the colored identity, part of the colored culture. You know, the gold tooth at one point that was had to be in colored culture. You know, these are some people will call these frivolous, but that's part of who we are. Not all of us follow that. You know, some see this as a trend, something like I've never one. I'm not one to be, you know, in that whole fashionista thing with Timberlands and Jordans and Nikes and wasn't up for all that. But mannerisms are another thing, right? So colored culture, and it's like you don't have these. How can I? What can I call it? You do not have these strict laws that you follow via chief or even elders, even just like drinking. Everyone would say to me like now it's the youngsters of today, they don't do this, they don't do that. From a black perspective, you don't look at underage drinking as part of a culture. It's just naughty people doing that. Understand what I'm saying? Smoking is another thing that most black kids don't do as a culture or a tradition. Whereas in the colored culture, it's almost inevitable that 12, 13, 14, we're going to start smoking. Not all of us, it's those that want to smoke. It almost becomes the norm. It almost becomes the norm. Secondly, it's this whole wanting to start a family early. You know, that's just part of the tradition that is not common in black families, but in the colored community, that's a very big thing. You know, we want to start early, get things done early, get set in life early. That's just the way colored people. That's just how we roll. You know, but then a lot of people tell you coloreds don't have a culture. They think we like on similar levels with the black Americans was like black Americans don't have a culture. But black Americans will tell you that they do have a culture. You know what I mean? So not everybody who looks colored is or yeah, not everybody who looks colored is a colored by culture. You understand what I mean? So yeah, you can have a white mother and a black father, you can have a black mother or white father. You could follow either one of those two cultures. That's totally outside the realm of colored culture. So you can be colored by look, but not by culture. That's what I mean. Just the mannerisms, the way you operate, just walking and talking, just it's almost difficult and it's hard to box colored culture. It's just there are just certain things that are just innate to colored people. Like for example, our cars may not be the most expensive German cars and those. But one thing our cars must have is sound systems that are even more expensive than the car itself. Do you understand what I mean? So that is part of who we are. Lowriders, low riding cars, you know, loud cars, loudspeakers. Damn, it's just the way colored people roll. It's just how we are. This is part of who we are. So, in a nutshell, it is difficult for us to be boxed into one, into one, into one group, into one culture, into one anything. It is for us. It's a diverse range of things that make us who we are because we are the most diverse group of people on this planet. And unfortunately, hello, the small dog, no. And it's very difficult for us to be boxed into a small, like how it's easy to say, according to Zulu tradition, according to Xhosa tradition, according to Yoruba, Igbo, Shona, the tradition. There's according to colored tradition, very few things. It's hard to say according to colored tradition because in the colored way, like I said to you, it's broken down into different things. You know what I mean? There's the traditional colored people, there's the Muslim colored people, there's the Cape Malay colored people, there's the Khoi colored people, there's the So it's not one distinctive thing that you can just say, this is what makes up the colored culture. It's an array of different things. Hence, people say coloreds do not have a culture because there's just not one thing that defines what makes a colored by culture, if you know what I'm saying. It's confusing, it's hard to understand. You need to actually be a part of it. You need to be in it to see it, witness it. You need to go into the various different colored groups and see how each one of those groups operate for you to finally discern whether or not colored people have a culture. Other than outside of the obvious, the buying, the going to prison, the what else? The fighting, the drinking, the smoking. Yeah, everything else, dude, it's it's almost unique to a different region, and it's just not a blanket statement to say this one thing or these five things are colored culture. Outside of those, what I've just said to you now, there's no such a thing as according to colored culture. This is what we do. Almost no. Let me know if I was on the money or if I totally missed it with this one. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. You know we family, right? Holla.